The Aztecs had a tradition that before they came to the Valley of Mexico, in the area of Mexico City, they came from a place they called Aztlan. Obviously, they came from somewhere. The Aztecs spoke a language called Nahuatl. Nahuatl is one of the languages of the Uto-Aztecan language family. All of the languages of that family descended from a single language, now referred to as Proto-Uto-Aztecan, and the people who spoke that language all lived in the same area. This is a map of where Uto-Aztecan languages are spoken now. A German scholar named Eduard Seller noticed that a famous depiction of Aztlan includes a temple with a symbol at the top for reeds or rushes on the left and a symbol for water on the right. The Nahuatl word for reed is astapili, and the word for water is atl. Combining them in a certain way, plus the marker lan for place, makes Aztlan, meaning in or next to the Reed Sea. In the Bible, what we call the Red Sea, translated from Hebrew, is actually the Reed Sea. The Red Sea in the Middle East even resembles in some ways the Gulf of California between Baja California and Mexico proper. Storytellers among the Aztecs repeated ancient oral traditions of their people, often interpreting the oral stories as colorful diagrams they painted themselves. These sequences of diagrams were called codices. This is a diagram from the Codex Boturini, dated to about 16th century, showing Aztlan at the left. This diagram is a major source of the idea that Aztlan was an island. The Codex Albin has some written text, which translated says, "Here is written the history of the Mexica, who came from a place called Aztlan." So from there, in the middle of the water, they came in boats. The Aztecs called themselves Mexica. Words have prototypical meanings. When we think of a dog, we think of an animal, a living organism that has four legs, but word meanings can stretch to fit the context. A dog with three legs is still a dog. A dead dog is still a dog. If Aztlan had actually been a peninsula, since there is no word in Nahuatl for peninsula, it would have been natural in the oral traditions to have used one of the Nahuatl words for island to describe it. One of those words for island actually means long land in the water. Could Aztlan have actually been a peninsula? Aztec traditions said that their ancestors came to the Valley of Mexico in the vicinity of Mexico City from somewhere to the north. The Codex Boturini and a couple of other codices, probably based on the Codex Boturini, indicate that after leaving Aztlan, the ancestors of the Aztecs arrived in boats and came to a place called Colhuacan. This diagram is the first plate of the Codex Boturini. Most people have assumed that Colhuacan was the first place they arrived after crossing the water, but it might be possible that the first plate was like a cover sheet summarizing the whole journey, since the eventual place they arrived after the migration was called Colhuacan. Another possibility is that there was a more ancient place called Cohuacan, where they arrived soon after crossing the water. An old map by Alexander von Humboldt in 1811 shows a place called Colhuacan, which is described as the ancient Colhuacan or Big Colhuacan. This ancient Colhuacan is in the province of Sonora, across the Gulf of California from Baja California. A famous map called the Siguenza map, considered to be from the 16th century, purports to be a diagram showing the Aztec migration path from Aztlan to Chapultepec Hill, which is now Mexico City. Giovanni Francesco Gemelli Carreri redrew this map in 1704 and made it more readable and added some interpretive text. The Gemelli-Carreri map is on top. The Sequenza and Gemelli maps identified places along the way with glyphs. Gemelli-Carreri interpreted some of the glyphs and added place names next to the glyphs in the 1704 map. Some of the people in the Gemelli map have glyphs over their heads, which have been interpreted as name glyphs. For example, the glyph above one man in the map depicts Coxcoxli, king of the Colhua people. The glyph is of a coxcox bird to remind us of the name Coxcoxli. One figure of the 10 people was interpreted by Gemelli Carreri to signify 104 years, which interval of time was called Chehuehue Tiliztli. Che means one and Huehue Tiliztli means antiquity. So this period of time was known as the first antiquity soon after they crossed the water from Aztlan. The Aztecs had a 52-year cycle in which each year was given a number from 1 to 13 and a name: flint, house, rabbit, or reed. If they wandered for 104 years after crossing the water, the places later in the map may not be very helpful in determining the location of Aztlan. The recognizable places after this figure in the map do seem to fit within Mexico. There is one set of 5 people and another set of 10 people in the map just after they crossed the water from Aztlan. The name glyphs could have signified 1. Names of leaders at the time, 2. Names of family groups or tribes at the time, or 3. Perhaps the first sound of each glyph combined to form a Nahuatl word that described the people or where they had come from. 2 of the name glyphs of the group of 5 and 5 of the name glyphs of the group of 10 appear later in the map. If they were names of family groups or tribes, many of them disappeared before arriving at their destination. It is not always clear what Nahuatl word or words are signified by each name glyph. One interpretation for the first sounds in the group of 5 people results in the word Atlaka, which means people of the sea or lake, which does seem to be an appropriate description of the people, since they came from a place in or next to the Reed Sea. Other interpretations of the glyphs either result in sequences of sounds that are not Nahuatl words, or words that do not fit in the context. If the first sounds of the glyphs were not meant to spell a word, it seems like a big coincidence that Atlaka means people of the sea or lake, which does fit the context of Aztlan being an island or a peninsula. Interpreting the sequences of first sounds of the name glyphs in the 10-person figure as a Nahuatl word is more challenging. Here are 3 tentative possibilities. The first doesn't quite work because of the first sound, but the rest is Tochli, followed by Acatl, which means rabbit and reed respectively, which are 2 of the name designations of years in the Aztec calendar. Since Gemelli Carreri interpreted the meaning of the 10-person figure as 104 years, perhaps there is some way Tochli Acatl is relevant. The second possibility is Zantlapictli, which means without purpose. This could mean that the Aztecs wandered around without purpose during this period of 104 years. The third possibility is Zantlahmati, which means for there to be an abundance of something. This might mean that they were in an area of abundance, or that they came from a place that was bountiful. Places visited along the way are depicted in the map as being next to the trail. One of the places along the way shows an island with a tree on it and a bird making a lot of noise. Although some have interpreted this island as Aztlan itself, this figure is next to the trail, so it was not Aztlan itself, but rather a place encountered along the way. This bird is evidently supposed to represent a magpie. Northwest of Mexico City is Baja California, which is separated from most of Mexico by the Gulf of California. The largest island in the Gulf of California is called Tiburon. Magpies have been identified as one of the major species on the island of Tiburon. Note that there is a person going by this island in a boat. This person is laying down. Tiburon Island was inhabited for centuries by the Seri people, a tribe unrelated to any other in the area. The Seris were fierce warriors and were even believed by some to be cannibals. Could it be that this figure indicates that the Aztecs kept a low profile as they passed by this island in boats so that they would not arouse the attention of the Seri people? If Tiburon Island is the island depicted in the Gemelli map that the ancestors of the Aztecs rode past going east, could this mean that Aztlan was actually the peninsula of Baja California